Hello and good afternoon. It is 4:05 p.m. It is Monday. What is it? Oh yeah, May 12th. Monday, May 12th, and I am here this afternoon making this video, and I'm trying to make the best use of my time. I did some more writing and more narrating, and as I was working on my video, I'm starting to pick up my interest, get it out of the fog, the brain funk that I was in. That doesn't mean that I'm 100% cured because, I do have my lapses of depression. It is what it is, okay? And there's times, where I cure myself and then I go back in to find more stuff that is revealed and I go right back into my depression. That's life, okay? So, anyway, today like I said, I worked on that and, I had come to realize that I want to arrange it a little bit differently. Okay, like keep certain topics within a certain order, which makes sense. Like when I first started, I kept thinking, well, this makes sense in this order. But then I'm thinking, you know what? As I'm moving in, because I'm adding a little bit more stuff to the dialogue, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to rearrange this a little bit. So yeah, I'm taking more time on this. And, I think it was kind of silly for me to project it would be done by May 1st. And I think it's the reason why is because, I've always been like really, and it really, if I really didn't have all this mess going on in my head, the depression, the sadness, the anger, as all of this has unraveled itself, it's just difficult for me to focus on that only and only that. Like I said, if it wasn't for all of that drama, then I probably would have had it done by now. I would have. I keep my word. But yeah, even Maria has heartache, has sadness, has can deal with things that just literally like blow my mind. And I will say that this has blown my mind. I had mentioned that I am thinking about adding a new spread in this new upcoming newsletter. I have been working on my research on alien races. Now, and like I said, I had talked about me reading about alien races years ago, okay? But I am not an expert of alien races as to where I can sit here and say, oh, okay, like for example, the Inuit people. I cannot sit here and come up with the name of the alien race that they come from. Okay, and this is not really the point. I wish I had all the information, like I could sit there and say, okay, the people who were, located on this particular side of Africa are most likely from this one and this one and those. No, all I can do is like create spreads and try to determine mine or someone else's. Okay, I do have a card that indicates that someone just kind of fell from the sky. It doesn't really relate to, any specific, what do you call it? Alien race or the one that I know of. Okay. Like I said, there's so many, but I'm only listing like about 12 or so. Okay. Based on my understanding. Now I understand that, ages ago every culture had their own gods. Everybody had their own temples, shrines, so forth, so on and so forth. Okay, and then it kind of emerged. People became like, for example, aliens may have interbred with other alien groups, and then we have like hybrids and stuff like this. Like I said, there's certain alien groups that can get along, they can coincide. Some of them have intermingled, okay, which is why we do have hybrids and stuff like this. And this is why, they have, continued their life form as they are. And then we have some that are extremely disagreeable, okay, like people who initiate things like gang stalking and stuff like that, because it's very difficult for them to understand, like to each his own. Like, I don't really care if, like, for example, maybe my next door neighbor chooses to have strawberry ice cream and they buy that every time they get a paycheck, right? And if they worked for me, like they were one of my employees, if this is what they did, this is what they did. I understand that, once I give them their compensation, that's their compensation. They work for themselves to pay their bills and so on and so forth. Okay, I am not somebody who cares about what people wear. I don't care if people choose to listen to rock music 24 hours a day in their home and then switch it up a little bit with R&B or listen to instrumental or whatever. Okay, these things are choices that we have. This is one of the reasons why, we have, like, when you go on, like for example, on Pandora, right? Pandora is you can listen to different music on there. You have your selections. There is no right or wrong to your selection. You just choose it, right? But Some people are like that. Like I know when I was dealing with gang stalking, I was being attacked for things that like, okay, are you serious? But I understand the root of it. It becomes, I'm dealing with people who are extremely narcissistic, as well as a religious group that had racial leanings. And then we had, the fact that I was a victim of human trafficking through my biological mother, who has no legal right over me. Okay, so we have all these different people who are basically ignorant of the law, but still, at the same time, you understand their intent. Their intent was to dominate, to take something, and to me, I have to agree with what the law says on this. Like, it's like there, to say you didn't know is no excuse. Okay, this is one of the reasons why it's a covert operation. Because if it was all good, well and good, they would just come out and tell me, hey, you know what? My name is Dinah Ross. I'm your mom, and I'm going to try to take your money. And I would tell her, no, you're not, because I'm getting old and I'm trying to take care of myself, and that is my hard-earned money. As a matter of fact, this is my hard-earned time. I mean, I have wasted my life being a victim of human trafficking. I had every right to sit here and talk to employers, open up my own business, do whatever I wanted to do, and alone, without permission, I am over the age of 18. Okay, so this is my issue about, extreme narcissism. Extreme narcissism, okay? Where does this come from? To me, it's like when we talk about demonic people, we need to get down to like the nitty gritty. Okay, so this is the reasons why I decided to make this alien spread. Okay, and I think I'm going to put it in the newsletter, because I think that, I've learned a few more things about myself, going back to past lives and understanding, I created a card, to let me understand, like, where does this cloning thing come from? Like, I know I talked about it in the video that I had attached. I think it was on the third or the fourth quarter newsletter, about Vril, about, learning how to clone. Okay. But I do understand that, cloning goes back, from different alien races. And within their group, they didn't like any deviations within their group. Okay, so if there was any sort of deviation, like for example, everybody was just like at 12 noon, everybody, got outside and picked bushes, right? But there was this one person who had a desire to do something else at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. That's a deviation. You get cited out for that sort of stuff. You get picked on, and you may be like, punished for that sort of behavior. Okay. Well, we now live with multiple different kinds of people on the world, on the earth, right? And each person, each group, it might be a violation to one group, it's complete free ticket to another group, okay? And they don't understand that, okay? And the thing is that what I love about secular law is the fact that, okay, you have the right to do what you want to do, as long as, you keep it within your group. If these people want to congregate amongst themselves, okay, and I'm referring to basically hate groups, okay, hate groups that are defined under the law, meaning people who have a problem with holding back their anger, people who have a problem with holding up their jealousies, their need to compete, things that violate other people's human rights. They still have a right to feel the way that they do. They still have the right to feel superior if this is what they choose to do. You see what I'm saying? But if they enact this, for example, enact some sort of harassment in any way, shape, or form, there are laws for that. Okay, because we have the right to live our lives the way we want to, and they have the right to feel the way that they want to, but they do not have the right to enact that. Okay, this is what I'm trying to say. This is one of the reasons why when people talk about racism and stuff like that, it just kind of goes in one ear and out the other to me. I guess if that's how you want to be, and I'm somebody who's really open about confronting that. Hey, if you don't like me, like for example, if I'm dealing with a racist coworker or something, if you don't like me, that's fine. Let's just, I'm trying to keep my job. Okay, I'm just be up in front. Talk about how your job is important to you, and that in order for you to make a living, you need to be able to have a job in order to pay your rent and have food. And say, I was just want to make sure there's not any problem with you, unless of course you're trying to make me lose my job. And I said, if you don't want to communicate with me other than things that are relating to work, we don't have to communicate with each other, and walk away. You don't have to communicate with that. A person does not have to be your best friend. But if this person is continually saying stupid things, snide remarks, doing things that are undermining you, whether this is a racist issue, sexist issue, or whatever, okay, this should be definitely something that needs to be reported. You know what I mean? But I'm just saying it's like you need to identify these sort of things. Understand that some people I'm fully aware there are some people who do not understand how to behave. They do not understand it because they have, certain forms of indoctrination, and they have a certain form of entitlement. You know what I mean? And this is how I deal with it. You know what I mean? And so, when it comes to these like different alien races, it's important to understand that. Some of these people are like really they're diehard. This is why like people like Steve Murray, he could not help but say stuff that was very stupid. He could not help himself. You know what I mean? And I understood this, okay? But still, I told these people, hey, you know what? You continue to do this, we're going to have a problem. And so lo and behold, look at all this. Look at all of this, okay? So they were willfully ignorant. Okay, there's certain legal terms for people who, you know, purposely ignore the law. It doesn't matter, okay? Because they understand it. Whether I made those videos or not, they are legal. That they should have a penalty. But the problem with it is that it was very hard for me to get legal justice because of the terrorism that was going on, that was created by the same group of people. Okay, this is when you have this infiltrates into businesses, places where places like financial institutions, education systems, what do you call it, medical facilities, whatever. Okay, where people start to conspire, and yes, that's a form of conspiring against somebody. So today, as I was working on my video, I was talking about the different forms of harassment, the difference between rudeness and harassment, and I was going into explaining civil as well as criminal harassment. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to change this up a little bit, make it a little bit more uniform, and I also am trying to put in a little bit more care to the appearance of my video, okay? Because I take this very seriously, very seriously. You know what I mean? I am fine with all the alien races. I don't have a problem with alien races. I don't. Like, I don't sit here and think about, these people, they might worship this particular deity or they might do this on this particular day, and I can't stand it. I can't stand it. Why can't I stand it? It's not my problem. You know what I mean? You know why? Because I'm somebody who's self-directed. The law basically is telling you to be self-directed in its own way. I'm only accountable for me. Okay, so the only thing I need to worry about is what I need to take care of, and to keep my rent going, keep it surviving. That's it. But there are certain groups of people who want to survive at other people's expense, and this is why they enact these sort of things, these dangerous forms of genocide. Okay. Anyway, so my deck that I'm creating breaks down in 4 different sections. Okay, so we have things like the names of the different alien races and a brief description, where they, if they're believed to come from a different planet or whatever, you know what I mean. And then we also have like the other set of cards we're going to be focused on the time, and then I have the sex. Now I've come to understand, that we talked about cloning in my other newsletter about how clones are somehow modified in a very strange way. Okay, this is sort of cloning, has been adopted by these underground crime syndicates that work through for example LDS or whatever, and a lot of people come back being punished by these churches because they are naturally following in line with their last incarnation or whatever. Do I think that some homosexuals could be genetically created this way? Yeah, I do. There is a huge possibility of that because of the issue of cloning. And so I do, if you look at the Bible, we read about things like eunuchs, right? I did create a card that talks about eunuchs. Okay, so I'm trying to be as thorough as I can. I'm doing a lot of brain dumping here to create this. And, I hope, once I do publish my newsletter that you guys will enjoy this. Through this particular spread, I do believe, okay, because there were some cards that popped up without me asking it, and I just kind of put it together. I'm starting to think that perhaps maybe, and I have to do some more readings on it, but, I talked about my sister, Tanya. I do know that my father was the clone of Tut, and I do know that I believe Diana Ross is the clone of Cleopatra. Okay. And then together they would make my sister Tanya. Now, I have not confirmed all of that in the card, but I did confirm something that related to what happened to Tanya, while we were living together. Okay. Because I was thinking about, this issue with Olivet Baptist Church. And then after that, I picked up my cards and started kind of moving them around. And then I saw, and a message started coming through. So I understand what's going on with what happened with Tanya. And then I do believe that Tanya and I are sisters only because, well, we're half sisters because of the cloning thing where we share the same biological mother. Now, my biological mother, I've never met her in person. I don't know her, you know what I mean? But she is a trafficker, and she has caused me a lot of problems, a lot of problems, for a very, very long time. And I'm dealing with a lot, of mental issues because of it, and obviously financial issues because of it. And, that is really rough. But anyway, yeah, so that's pretty much my update. I've just been, thinking about how I want this to look, how I want the structure to be, and then, I'm trying to be as thorough, but not overboard as well. This is supposed to be like a brief type of introduction or an explanation as to, certain things that occur, things that we're aware of, but give you more understanding as to why it's inappropriate to do these things. Now, like I said, if people behave a certain way and they go outside of those guidelines, that's their choice, right? But people sometimes don't understand why people don't want to be around them. Okay, some people don't understand that they're really rude. They don't understand their tone. They're not aware of the things that they say and the things that they do. I was watching a clip on Facebook, right? I think it was Facebook. Yeah, I think it was like the last one was on Facebook. Anyway, where else would I have seen it? Anyway, it was where this girl, there was a black girl and she was wearing braids, okay, and this white guy just reaches over and starts tugging on it. She doesn't know this man, and I remember, in my times when I was at work, I would have people just kind of touch you, and a lot of women or people in general, get touched without inviting that, you know what I mean? And some people mean it to be friendly, right? But when it comes to black people, right, we don't like people touching our hair. Okay, it's intrusive. You know what I mean? And it's the one thing that sets us apart, obviously, from white women. So it's like, it's when you're sitting here like over focused on it, making comments about it, talking about it, honing in on it. It's rude. It's rude. Okay. So it's like, and so you'll get these people that want to touch it or make comments about it or make you the center of attention of it. Yes, our hair is different. The texture of our hair is different. We have different styling options, okay, which we're entitled to have. And I understand that this was one of the things that ignited the whole DEI thing. Okay. Now I had maybe, and I don't know, I'm going to have to take this to my serious meditation thing because I remember hearing some videos about me. I think it was a little bit around the Justin Hayward time period. I was really bored and I was sitting here like, and they talk about this chosen one, and I know they're talking about me, okay, because it's too much of a coincidence. They were talking about. Let me get a straight. I'm so thirsty. They were talking about a person who may have, you know, performed a destiny swap, meaning somebody who have taken something from me. And this was right around the time where the whole Justin Hayward thing was going on, or right around the same time that I was dealing with Patreon. And I had just recently found out that my hard-earned work has been benefiting someone that is not me, that has not lined my pocket, has not made my life any better, and it was unfortunately my biological mother. Okay, and so I am starting to understand that this human trafficking thing. When I had mentioned that astronomical number on that one little picture a while ago, I think it was like 41 million or some weird number like that, and I keep thinking, okay, this is a big contribution to this sort of stuff. Okay, a lot of times the people who are trafficking you is a parent or someone who really doesn't have the right to do these sort of things, but they are of the overly dependent. I mentioned this a couple days ago about my anger over people who are overly dependent, because they don't seem to understand that they are responsible for themselves. If you give birth to children with the intent of using them for anything, okay, you have a problem. Like, you're not you're not they were not responsible to take care of other people. Now, I will tell you, like, for example, if my son lost his job, okay, and he's been living with me for a while, he's my son, okay. The reason why I get upset about it is because we should have our own separate lives, okay. Do I believe that there was some sort of manipulation for him to come in and live with me? Yeah, I do, okay, and I know that's never going to be disclosed with me, okay. But in my mind, I know that I missed out a lot in life. So I obviously want my son to have a better life, okay? And also, we are two separate adults. We have two different sets of values, believe it or not. And I'm not mad at him for having different values than me. I don't hold it against him I understand it. I understand he has different values than me. Meaning, like, I mean, he's a good person, or the best he possibly can be as a human being, right? But he has different likes than me, he has different hobbies than me, and we live completely different. And so sometimes it's like, okay, well, I want him to be going off and doing his life, and I should have the right to be doing my life as well. Okay, but they place burdens, like everything about certain people that were in this network were just like nothing but burden. They throw burden, they take from you, and then they throw the responsibility on other people that it's not their responsibility. It's not. Now, I understand some people take care of their parents when they get older. You know what I mean? And that's fine. If especially if people cultivated the right kind of family dynamic to where there's love there and there's concern. Okay? I will tell you that is required when you're dealing with taking care of elderly people. Okay? That's the way it is. Okay? Because there's a lot of people who don't care about what happens to. And I worked in convalescent hospitals. I've seen it. Okay? So my point is that, I'm not anybody's cash cow. Okay. And I'm certainly not hers. And I'm very angry that she did what she did. And I'm angry that she had this group of people, right, who used religion as the criteria for me being able to live my life however I wanted to in the United States of America. Of course, I'm angry. You know what I mean? That was my money and in my time. Okay. So this whole issue that's been going on, has been, has sucked up my life. You know what I mean? And I am darn angry about it. I am angry about it. You know what I mean? But I'm trying to get people to understand, understand things like human trafficking, where the trickle down effect, how it actually occurs, how widespread it is, and what to look for. You know what I mean? And so when I'm talking about things like dual affiliation, I'm talking about dual affiliation in every sector of society. That means dual affiliations in law enforcement. Do I believe that there's Ku Klux Klan members in the law enforcement? Probably. Okay. Do they have a right to love their race? They absolutely do. Okay. Do they have the right to have these secret hating feelings of hatred towards people who don't look like them, whether that be races, religion, people who with sexual issues or whatever? Do they have the right to enact their hate on them? No, and they know that they don't. So sometimes people deliberately choose these sort of professions. Just like I talked about, how sometimes nurses end up killing people in the hospital. Okay, and they could be a part of some sort of underground syndicate, but whether that be out through their church or some sort of racial affiliation or whatever. This is how it works through these sort of people who are violating company laws or company whatever. Now, when it comes to the medical industry, I will tell you right now, I have never trusted the medical industry, especially after they gave me a shot in my leg when I took my son in for a checkup or a vaccine or something like that, and he was the patient, not me. You see what I'm saying? So I stopped. I was like, yeah, no, And so, of course, I understand the human body. I understand the human body. I understand how it works. Okay, so I don't sit here and like rely on pharmaceuticals. I won't touch them. And I understand there's times where people are going to have to do those sort of things. Okay, but I'm saying is I'm very careful. I do not trust institutions. Why? Because of infiltration. Okay, It is totally possible. Just I am telling you, just like me being targeted online through employment ads, going into job interviews, going into being contacted by somewhat big companies or whatever. Yes, this stuff spreads in different sectors of society. Okay. And so, I was thinking, as I was walking a couple of days ago, I kept thinking, when it comes to things like law enforcement, you know, how they need to, I'm going to summarize, the important things that are going on right now. You know what I mean? And what constitutes an actual arrest. Our law enforcement is supposed to be law enforcing the law. That is what they're supposed to do. You know, and this is me, like I said, I am not, and I have never ever tried to be like, a racist person, meaning like to think of hold my race superior to anybody. I have never done anything like that in my life, and nobody can say that I did. Nobody can even say that I even have a hand in this argument, because I don't. Okay, and anybody who got what they got, like they ended up dead or something, they got what they deserved. Okay, you know why? Because I could not get justice the way I should have gotten justice because of their illegal operation. Okay, but these are the places that these people are hiding. And like I said, I don't have a problem with people who love their race. You know what I mean? Good for you. Good for you. Okay, seriously, good for you. Okay, but you did something that was illegal. Okay, and so but it really does come down to what people are able to understand and how they're able to live. And there might be certain races or certain groups of people that are not able to do that. You know what I mean? And I know not all white people belong to like grays or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm just saying is, whatever, that is a phenomenon for the length of time. And the fact that, the shock of, or maybe the ignorance that I've seen that was displayed is what shocks me the most. The ignorance, it scared me. Like, I was giving out good points as to why these people needed to leave me alone, and they just kept going on and on and on and on and on and on. You know what I mean? And partly it could have been confused, or not really confused, but a lot of the cognitive dissonance was going on. These people convincing themselves that it was okay because they were with my mom. But the thing is, my mom's not my mom. She's not my Diana Ross is not my mother on piece of paper or anything, okay? Especially through an underground crime syndicate. She is my biological mother. She is a breeder. My adoptive mother was my legal mother, okay? And whether she was alive or not, I am over the age of 8 years. I'm over the age of 18. I vouch for myself, okay? So, and I wouldn't be surprised if my biological mother, okay, who I keep telling people that she's not my legal mother, okay, she could very well be like some sort of alien race or something, or maybe somebody who is just so overly dependent that she, is low enough to do what she just did. You know what I mean? But yeah, that just blows me away. So that's what I've been up to, and I'm trying to, keep up my mood. I think it's important for me to keep up my mood. Am I always bubbly? No, I'm not, you know what I mean? But it still baffles my mind, and because what baffles my mind is how people can have and live with so much discord in their life. You know what I mean? I'm somebody who, I am very laid back. Like, seriously, I don't care what other people do. As long as they're not, inflicting their stuff on me, like, their habits, their issues are not, inflicting or affecting my life in any way, then we're cool. Now, the reason why me and my son have these little tensions and stuff like that, because, Houston's kind of messy. Okay, and I understand. Okay, but I get it. Okay, and I get it. He's used to doing his own thing. He's an adult. Okay, and we're forced in this situation. Okay, and I love my son half to death. I really do. I love my son. But the thing is that, it gets very difficult when, I'm used to living by myself, and, he's not, as clean as I am. He's not as girly as I am. He's whatever, right? So, really, and it becomes a tension issue because it's like he should be out doing his thing, and I should be out doing mine, regardless of the fact that I'm a woman. Okay, my reason for not getting married, everybody knows my reason for getting married. I was chased by the same people, especially this woman who had no right to be a part of my life. You know what I mean? And I think, it just drains me when I think about, how much I missed out on life, all because of this. All because of something that number one, I'm not responsible for at all. The only thing that these people were angry about is because I obviously didn't want to have anything to do with their religion. Obviously, you know what I mean? I understand where all this stuff originates, and what I don't know, I try to fill in the blanks. I try to understand it and research as much as I possibly can. And so I'm trying to find like documentation to confirm what I'm talking about. And I have read about this before. I have read about, how alien races came and the certain things that they would do within their groups and their tribes or their little whatever. And they interbred with humans and stuff like that, created hybrids, intermingled with each other, or whatever. You know what I mean? So I understand these sort of things. Okay. So therefore, it's not, and they feel as though it's an act of defiance because I'm not going to listen to them. And it's not an act of defiance, it's my right. You know what I mean? So it's like these people worship a completely different being. You know what I mean? Or they look at it in a completely different way. Or it would not make sense for, me to attend or believe a religion that basically downgrades who I am. Why would I do that? You know what I mean? Why only a self-hater would do something like that? And to believe me, I'm somebody who would rather serve in truth than anything else. And there was times where I opened myself up to this. Okay, if I'm a cursed person, well, then I guess I would have to accept that and understand that, right? Through my spirituality. But I'm not a cursed person. You know what I mean? I'm somebody who thinks very clearly. I understand right and wrong. You know what I mean? So, regardless, okay, the thing is that if people have these sort of ideas, these sort of religious or apocalyptic delusions, or delusions of grandeur where they think they're above the law, well, if they do some sort of crime, like a hate crime, okay, then law enforcement needs to be on it, and it cannot be on it if there's dual whatever. So, in some places I was thinking, as I was going back to my story, I was walking and I kept thinking, maybe it may be better. And some people might have an issue with this, but perhaps maybe law enforcement should be segregated. Now that sounds really touchy, right, to some people, right? But I can't expect a person who harbors racist resentment to be interested in the well-being of a group of people of color. Do I expect it? No. Okay, now what I'm saying could be that I am not in any way promoting segregation. I'm saying in certain areas, okay, in certain sectors where there's a possibility where somebody might have some sort of bias. And I'm not saying it has to be a law. I'm not saying we have to do this. I'm just asking you, what do you think about that? Do you think there should be segregation within law enforcement? And why I'm saying this is, maybe the reason why when I called 911 and I did not get a response when I was on I Street when somebody was sitting on my porch in the middle of the evening, is it because I lived in the wrong neighborhood, or was it just because I was Maria on a targeted individual list that white people chose to follow, or certain white people chose to follow? And this is me, I'm cool with white people, I don't have a problem with white people. I'm just saying is, when I think about the deep issue of the persistence and how long it lasted, okay, this could be deeper than that. So perhaps maybe white officers would prefer to service white neighborhoods. Okay, that doesn't mean I'm not going to stroll into Rosedale, because I go to Rosedale sometimes. If I'm in Rosedale, I'm going to stop off at the Walmart in Rosedale or whatever. I've been there over there. But when it comes to law enforcement, and this is not in any way trying to promote racism, it is not. I'm trying to understand, people's level of comfort and what really brings people a sense of having, law and order served within certain communities. Like here, I live among a lot of Hispanics. There's black people. I've seen a few white people. You know what I mean? And because that is reflected within this particular area, I would think that it needs to be dispersed that way, perhaps. And this is just food for thought. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying is, this needs to be considered, okay? Because these people are here to protect and serve. Do they feel like they really care about protecting and serve in certain areas? That's my question. Okay, it is not in me. I have never been a racist person, but this idea came into my mind and I thought I would share it, okay? Because the point is that, You know, we are living in a time where I just dealt with, uh, 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 what do you call it? Human trafficking. Human trafficking. And I understand how infiltration gets into certain places, you know, certain areas, okay? And like I said, I'm not trying to say, does a person who believes in white power, does he not deserve his job? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying is maybe this particular person who supports white power should be over there where he needs to serve his white people. This is what I'm saying. Okay, if he harbors this sort of belief system, that might be his only issue that would prevent him from being a good police officer. Believe it or not. Now I'm picking this through. Okay, instead of him trying, you know, expecting this person to be put in a situation where he has to serve people that he doesn't really care about, and he might accidentally end up beating the shit out of them because, you know, he doesn't really see them as human beings. So maybe it would be better if he just served over there instead of putting him in situations where he's open to losing his job. This is an idea that I'm thinking out. Okay, and it's in no way me trying to promote racism. I'm just being realistic. I'm being realistic. Okay. Now, if a word person doesn't have any of those, you know, sort of affiliations or certain beliefs or whatever, then they could be on a police squad or whatever and serve these sort of neighborhoods themselves, right? But for certain people who might, because I'm trying to be fair. You know why? Because when I dealt with my hate being targeted by these hate people, these group people who used a black woman as a face to, you know, accomplish their goal, meaning my stupid biological mother, who is not my legal mother, okay, used her, whatever. They were willing to stomp me out, never give me any sort of opportunity, but I am showing them the way of cooperation, the way of using logic and reason, and the way of being fair, because I am not going to resort to their stupid form of genocide and saying, oh, I'm going to try to stomp you out. Now, the reason why I curse Rex, he needed to die. He needed to die. Okay? That man was very sick. Okay? And I don't care about what happens to Diana Ross either. You know what I mean? But I'm trying to slowly but surely unwound the problem of hate here in this world, okay? And it needs to start somewhere. So this is one of the reasons why I'm talking about the moral reset in California, talking about it and submitting it to the correct people. I did get the intuitive message that people are making an effort to reduce the issue of dual affiliations. And I understand what I talked about, you know, the segregation of law enforcement. Uh, this is me showing my fairness, okay? Because really, the people who were targeting me wanted to wipe me out and they did not care, okay? I am showing a sense of humanity. I am showing that uh, I still respect the life of other people. Even though there were people who were really doing everything they could to try to kill me, I am showing them that I am the bigger person. So I'm just saying is, what do you think of this idea? How do you feel about this idea? Do you think it makes sense? Okay, I'm somebody who doesn't call law enforcement at all anyway. Okay, because I don't call law enforcement. I don't call anything anymore. Okay, I literally take care of myself. Maria is on her own. But I'm talking about, what are we talking about when it comes to other people and how society, you know, needs to get cleaned up in order to be a better place for people who are going to, hopefully, if my education system gets approved, who are going to be elevating themselves and living in a more moral society. So it needs to be clear of this sort of brutality, this sort of stuff. Okay. So anyway, I hope you guys get to talking amongst yourselves. I will do some readings to find out exactly how other people feel about that issue. In the meantime, I'm going to go back to work. And you know, like I said, you know, I am here as an unbiased person. I don't have racial biases. Believe it or not, I don't. You know, I have been mistreated by so many people of different races as well as religions that I don't have any biases. I am just simply making sense of it, okay? And I understand when it comes to segregation, you know, we're talking about issues of law enforcement. I am not saying that I do not go into a white-owned business or something like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when it comes to dealing with certain situations and perhaps even medical issues. Maybe that might be a better option. And I'd like to hear, or at least do some readings on feedback. I'm taking this seriously. Okay, I'm moving on now. Take care. Bye bye.